This video is brought to you by Sailrite. Visit Sailrite.com for all your project supplies, tools, and instructions. In this video, we're going to cover the process of building a 3-bow Bimini frame. Before we can build a Bimini top, we need a frame to pattern from. That frame will also be used, obviously, to hold the Bimini top up. This video will walk you through the process. After building the frame, we will then show you how to build the Bimini top. You can find a variety of Bimini frame kits and Bimini skin kits at Sailrite. Frame kits are exactly what the name implies, simply the frame. A skin kit is the actual Bimini top material and supplies to build it. The objective in this video is to build a 3-bow Bimini frame kit. This illustration shows some of the common terms and hardware that you will experience when building a 3-bow Bimini frame. Before we can start the process of building the frame, we need to know 3 measurements: the width, the spread, and the nominal height. To get these measurements, you will need to go to the boat and determine what works best for your Bimini. Decide where you want the Bimini mounted on the port and starboard side of your boat and take a measurement. The spread is the distance from bow to stern along the top edge of the future Bimini. And finally, the height is from the mounting position up. Our Bimini will be mounted to a wooden platform. Here are the measurements for the Bimini that we'll be building. Yours may be completely different. We will be mounting our frame to a wooden base, but on the boat, you should be sure that your Bimini location, height, and span provides the maximum coverage, but does not interfere with the boom or other rigging. In lieu of mounting ours to the boat, we're going to mount ours to a wooden frame. There are many advantages to building the Bimini frame on a wooden platform. It's easily moved around, no standing on ladders or teetering off the edge of a boat when making the frame, and especially when patterning from it for the Bimini top. Making this wooden platform is easy. We'll show you how to make one for your new Bimini. To build this wooden platform, we need to use 2x4s. You can pick those up at your local lumber yard. As long as you know the spread and the port and starboard mounting position, you can make a materials list quite easy for these 2x4s. Our wooden platform will be larger than our actual Bimini. We're using all 8-foot-long 2x4s and attaching them together. To attach the ends of the 2x4s together, we're using grip-fast connector plates. Those two can be purchased at a hardware store. Stapling scrap carpet to various locations on the underside will help you to slide the frame around on your floor surface. We also recommend using the grip-fast connector plates on both the top side and bottom side of your assembly, since the platform is rather large. On the center 2x4, that will be our width. Here we're finding the center location and we'll mark our width from starboard to port side where we want the Bimini to be mounted. For us, it's 90 inches. Here Bill is confirming that we have a 90-inch measurement starting from the port side and going to the starboard. At those marks, we will install the universal deck hinge. It comes in the Bimini frame kits. Also, the oval head tapping screw number 10, 1 1/4 inch comes in the kit as well. We'll use those to mount it to this wooden platform. Mounting this hardware to the platform is temporarily done, basically to build the frame and pattern the Bimini top. We will be using this hardware later on the boat. We built our platform larger than the actual Bimini frame, so here Bill measures over to find the edge of the frame, which is 6.5 inches. He will mount the strap eyes at 6.5 inches from the edge of the board, so they are directly in line with the universal deck hinge. The strap eyes and the stainless steel screws are also included in the Bimini frame kits. 4 strap eyes are secured at the corner of our board, so they are in line with the universal deck hinge. When it comes time to mount this hardware to the boat, we need to bed it appropriately. That's what this chapter is all about. Here we're going to demonstrate installing the universal deck hinge. This will be the location for a future Dodger on our boat. Once you've determined the location of the fitting, use an awl or a punch and make a recess so your drill bit will not wander when you start to drill through the fiberglass. To install the universal deck hinge, we'll use stainless steel Phillips oval head tapping screws number 10 size. For these screws, we recommend a 5/32 inch bit. Since we're using self-tapping screws, we only want to go the depth of the screw mounted in the hardware. So here we'll measure its depth and then place tape on the drill bit so we go almost exactly the same depth as the screw will go in the fiberglass. That way we won't go through the other side of the fiberglass. Because the awl made a little recess, we can drill this without the bit moving when we drill through the fiberglass. The depth of the hole must accommodate the entire length of the screw that will protrude from the bottom of the hardware. We recommend that you countersink the hole. Here we're using a countersink bit to do so. If you don't do this, you may have problems down the road with stress cracks coming from the screw's area. Another advantage of the countersunk hole is that our butyl tape that we'll be using for a bedding compound will be compressed into that cavity, and it'll make a beautiful watertight bedding compound for our fixture. We've removed a small section of butyl tape from the roll and will now take it and form it or press it onto the post of the screw. It will compress nicely when the fitting comes up against the deck. Any hardware that needs to be mounted to the fiberglass deck should be bedded in such a way, including the strap eyes or other hardware. If you are through bolting, follow the same procedure. Now, as we screw this fastener or universal deck hinge onto our fiberglass, you'll notice that the butyl tape squeezes out from underneath our fastener. That means it's also filling up that cavity that we created over the hole, thus making this a very watertight application. Butyl tape is also very easy to clean up. Here we'll take some excess butyl tape and wad it up, and then just simply use it to dab up the squeezed out portion of the butyl tape around our fastener. Bimini frame kits come with the universal deck hinges. If you want to change what comes in the kit, be sure to give us a call. We're glad to change any components that come with any of the Bimini frames or Bimini kits. We've mounted the deck mount on our wooden platform. If you're not using that, you would have yours mounted to the boat. This hardware, including the strap eyes, will be removed later on and used on the boat. Take all the guesswork out of cutting your tubing. Draw a scale rendition. That's next. To cut our frame to size, we need to draw a scale representation of the frame. But before we do that, we need to discuss the differences between measuring at the mounting position on the side or measuring from the center line, which has the crown portion of tubing. Let's begin the discussion. Here's a look ahead at our frame when it's completed. Here on the side you can see that it is 39.5 inches. Now we'll take a measurement at the center of the Bimini, and as you can see it's 42.5 inches. It's higher by 3 inches. Since the horizontal pieces of our bows are crowned, we can expect the height to increase by about 3 inches. That's at the center or midship of the Bimini. So, when drawing our scale rendition of the side of our Bimini, we need to use the 3-inch shorter side measurement and not the center measurement, which is 3 inches higher. Now from the center line of our Bimini, from bow to stern, we desire our span coverage to be about 74 inches. This includes the curved crown of the horizontal piece of the bow. We know that the crown adds about 3 inches for both the primary and secondary bow. That's a total addition of about 6 inches, from 74 inches at the middle position to now 68 inches at the side. Since our scale rendition will be of the side, we will subtract 6 inches from the desired 74 inches. Your measurements may be different, but the equations are not. We also want to touch on the fact that cutting down a frame may change a few variables, including the max spread, nominal height, and even the angle of the primary bow, as seen here. Also, the frame fittings or hardware will add about 2 inches to the overall height of your cut tubing. We will discuss accommodating for that when we do the scale rendition. If you've taken your measurements at the center line of the Bimini, you'll need to subtract 6 inches from the spread measurement and 3 inches for the height measurement, because we're going to be drawing a side rendition of the Bimini frame. Those are the only 2 measurements we need for the scale rendition. We will use 2 sheets of a grid paper. Take one sheet and fold it in half and then count the squares along its length. We'll use this folded sheet to measure our frame. We've decided that each square will represent 2 inches. We're going to start with the spread first. At the bottom edge of our graph paper, we need to strike a line that equals that measurement. Ours is 68 inches, but don't forget to divide it by 2 since each square represents 2 inches. We've marked out 34 squares along the bottom edge. We strike a line at that location, and we've also marked the center of that line. We'll draw a line straight up from the sides, one here and one here. At the center location, we need to mark up our height measurement. Ours is 39.5. Divide that by 2, and we need to mark at 19.75 squares. That mark at the top is also our center line. Strike a line at that location, joining the side lines. Next, from the bottom center position to the top left corner, strike a line there. Our hardware, eye-ends and jaw slides, will take up about 2 inches at the base of this leg. So we'll strike a line at 2 inches, which is 1 square. The secondary bow is typically placed about 3 inches up from that mark. So here we marked up 1½ squares. Now, from that last mark, we'll draw a line up to the top right corner. Again, hardware at the bottom of that leg will take up about 2 inches, so we'll mark 1 square there. Use something that has a 90-degree corner, like this ruler, and position it along the primary bow so it is 90 degrees to it and positioned on the center mark at the top. Now strike a line there. Again, hardware, eye-ends, and jaw slides will take up about 2 inches at the base of this leg. So we'll make a mark 1 square from that baseline, because 1 square equals 2 inches. Now we can measure each leg, being sure to measure from the 2-inch mark from the end of each leg, because the hardware will take up about 2 inches. And then we can write those measurements, or should I say squares, on the grid paper, because each square represents 2 inches. Following this procedure is the most accurate way to cut the tubing so that you get the results that you want in the end. Remember, each square on a grid paper represents 2 inches. Multiply the amount of squares by 2 to find the actual measurements you need to cut the frame tubing to size. In a perfect world, we believe a Bimini frame looks best at 45 degrees to the waterline. Here we're at 50 degrees. That's completely acceptable. When changes are made to the spread and the height of a Bimini frame, often the 45-degree angle that we'd like to achieve is changed, as you can see here, at 50 degrees. Using those measurements, we can cut our tubing to size. Each bow comes in 3 sections, 2 that look like hockey sticks, and 1 horizontal piece which has a slight crown to it. We'll start with the horizontal crowned pieces. The 3-bow Bimini Frame Kit has a max width of 106 inches. Subtract the desired width, and that's the cutoff length. However, we need to divide that by 2 because we need to cut that amount off of both ends of the crown section. So for us, 106 is our maximum width. We want 90 inches, which equals 16 inches. 16 inches divided by 2, and we need to cut 8 inches off of each end of each one of our 3 crowned sections. Here you can see Bill using masking tape and using a permanent marker to mark each one of our crowned bows to 8 inches on each end. If you were to measure the crowned piece after the appropriate amount were cut off of each end, you'd find it to be less than your desired width. Don't panic. The hockey stick section that will be added to this on both sides will extend that length to your desired width. If you don't have a clamp like this, you can have a second person hold the tubing. Be sure to put some carpet on the tabletop to prevent damage to the tubing as far as scratches go, and also your tabletop surface. This 1-inch stainless steel can be cut with a hacksaw, as you can see here. We recommend a hacksaw with a blade with 24 teeth per inch to cut the stainless steel tubing. We've decided to show this entire clip where we cut this tubing to the appropriate size, just so we can show you how long it takes to cut 1-inch stainless steel tubing with a hacksaw blade. just about 45 seconds per cut. Each of the sections of tubing that looks like a hockey stick should have a length measurement of about 63 inches. We're using a yardstick here to determine that measurement by measuring straight up the leg to the yardstick. Why are we showing this? We just want you to know this fact before you cut those legs. Now we can go back to our scaled rendition and find the desired leg height. Since each of the hockey stick sections are about 63 inches in height, all we need to do is subtract our desired leg height from that 63 inches, and we get the amount we need to cut off each one of the hockey stick sections. Measure up from the bottom edge of the leg of that hockey stick section to the desired cutoff measurement point and mark it with a Sharpie marker. We like to use masking tape at that location so it creates a nice clean cut. We will now cut that tubing with our hacksaw, just like we did earlier for the crowned horizontal sections. A 3 Bow Bimini kit consists of 2 hockey stick sections for the primary legs, 2 hockey stick sections for the secondary legs, and 2 hockey stick sections for the intermediate legs. So be sure to cut 2 legs per section to the desired height. You'll also notice on the hockey stick sections, each bow is fitted with splines, and those are riveted in place by Sailrite. These splines will allow us to join the hockey stick section to the crowned horizontal sections later on. Bill's cutting the intermediate bow here, places it, the cut piece, on top of the uncut piece, marks it, and then he'll cut that to match. Now that our tubing's cut to size, we can assemble each of the bows. Now our hockey stick sections can be joined with the horizontal crown sections via the splines. It's best to join these pieces on the floor so the crown is flat against the floor and the legs are flat against the floor, so everything is perfectly aligned. With the tubing laying perfectly flat on the ground and the joints butted up to each other, use a permanent marker and scribe a line across the section that is to be joined together. A rivet will be used here to secure these 2 sections together. First, we need to drill a hole. We'll show 2 methods to drill the hole. First, using the Drill Steady tubing tool. This tool makes it possible to drill without the drill bit slipping off the tubing. Because this tool raises the tubing off the floor, we have to use shims so that our lines are directly across from each other, the lines we scribed between the joint. Once they're aligned, we'll use an 1/8 inch drill bit and drill through the outer layer of tubing and the spline underneath it. We will not drill through the opposite side of the tubing, only the top 2 layers. Bill also used a cutting oil to help prolong the life of the 1/8 inch drill bit. Now we can remove the Drill Steady tubing tool and enlarge the hole. The stainless steel rivet that we'll be using calls for a number 11 drill bit. A 13/64" drill bit also works for this. Bill first enlarges the outer hole in the crowned portion of tubing. Then he moves to the spline portion where he pre-drilled the 1/8 inch hole and enlarges it. Now this tubing can be joined together and a rivet inserted. This 3/16" rivet is provided in the Bimini Frame Kits. It is a stainless steel rivet and will take quite a bit of force to set properly in the frame kits. Use a heavy-duty rivet gun. Be sure to also wear eye protection, as a mandrel will often shoot out of the riveting gun. That's why Bill's holding his hand over the top, though it still shoots out when his hand's not over the top. The second way to drill a hole is to use a spring-loaded center punch here instead of the Drill Steady tubing tool. The major advantage of using this tool is that the tubing can lay perfectly flat on the floor. We don't have to use shims to raise it up in any location. And the spring-loaded center punch creates a beautiful dimple so that we can drill the tubing without the drill bit wandering. We are starting with an 1/8 inch drill bit, and we'll drill through the crown portion and the spline underneath and stop. Then we'll switch to the number 11 drill bit and enlarge the hole. Now the same process is followed. Insert the rivet and set the rivet in the tubing. We'll do this for all of our Bimini frames. Now we'll follow that same procedure for the intermediate bow. This is the middle bow. Since the process is the same, let's move on. Using some of the scrap tubing and a Sharpie marker with tape wrapped around it, we'll insert it in the middle of the scrapped tubing here. We will now mark about 2 foot down the leg of the tubing, right in the center of the tubing, as the tubing rests flat on the floor. This Sharpie marker line will be used in patterning. We will not show patterning in this video, but the second video will utilize this line. We're also going to find the center of the horizontal or crown piece from spline to spline or joint to joint, and we'll mark its location here on each one of our tubing bows. So this is the center location. Follow this procedure for all 3 of the bows. Now we'll mount the primary and secondary bow to our wooden platform. We'll be building this frame and mounting it on a wooden platform. We find it easier to pattern on this platform rather than being on the boat. However, you may want to install your hardware and your frame and pattern from it on the boat. It is your choice. This is the primary bow, and since it is a 3-bow Bimini, first we need to install a jaw slide onto one of the legs. Next, we will install a jaw slide and an eye end onto that leg. Then at the bottom of the leg we'll install an eye end. We like to install these so that we can gain access to the set screw so it is facing up. We'll then attach the eye end to the universal deck hinge. The primary bow is typically the aft bow. This is the starboard side. On the opposite leg we will need to install the hardware just as we did here. And on that leg you'll find that typically you have to bend it in towards the universal deck hinge. It'll be off by about 3 inches, so it'll be under some pressure, but that is expected. If the receiver of the universal deck hinge is canted, be sure to release the set screw on the eye end and twist it so that it is vertically up and down, then tighten down the set screw. The primary bow is resting on the aft portion of our wooden platform. We'll flip it so that it rests on the forward portion of our wooden platform. And now we'll take the jaw slide and push it so that it is 3/4 inch away from the eye end at the bottom of that frame. We'll slightly tighten the set screw here. We may need to make further adjustments, so do not over tighten it. And do the same thing on the opposite leg. Our strapping tape is 3/4 of an inch wide. That's why we used it as a measuring guide. Now we can flip the primary bow back to the aft portion of our wooden frame. Now for the secondary bow. The rivets, if possible, should be facing towards the inside of the Bimini frame, not towards the outside. The secondary bow needs no hardware. We just need to install it into the eye end that we mounted 3/4 inch away from the bottom leg of the eye end on the primary bow. On the opposite end, it too will be under some pressure. You'll have to push to get it into the eye end. Now here's where the adjustment comes into play. Take the bows and position them vertically, and now your objective is to make them as even as possible. So here you'll need to release the jaw slide for the secondary bow and slide it down so that it will be almost even with the primary bow. When the bows are fairly even, lock the set screw, being sure that the amount on both sides is exactly the same. We will use the strapping tape and attach it to the center portion of the primary and secondary bow to the desired span that we want for our Bimini top. Our span is 74 inches. Here Bill loosely attaches the strapping tape at the center position of both bows and cuts it long so he can make final adjustments to his measurement. A second run of strapping tape will be attached to the secondary bow in an effort to keep the frame at a sort of level position. We will attach it loosely to the wooden frame here at the bottom side of the secondary bow so the frame is almost level. Be careful that the frame doesn't come back and hit you on the head when you do this. A second pair of hands will help in this process. Now he can use a tape measure and measure for the appropriate spread, from primary bow to secondary bow. Modifications can now easily be made. Once the appropriate spread is achieved, we can securely strap that strapping tape in place. It's not a bad idea to take a second run of strapping tape from the primary to secondary bow and attach it to the bottom side of this strapping tape. That conceals the glue, which will make it easier for patterning in a later step, and also secures the primary and secondary bow at the appropriate spots. Using a yardstick, we will attach it with some tape to the sides of the bow. Then we will measure down from the yardstick about 11 inches. We will mark the bow at that location. This is where we will attach strapping tape down to the wooden frame. We'll do that at all of the ends of the bows. Right now we only have the primary and secondary bow in place. At that location, we will attach strapping tape directly above that mark. Be sure to wrap it around the bow a few times so that it is secure. Then we'll run it down towards the strap eye that we've attached to the wooden frame, and we'll leave a little excess, approximately a foot of excess tape there. We'll do that at each one of the locations on the primary and secondary bow. Bimini frame kits do not come with the fast eye snap hook, stainless steel 1 inch. However, the skin kits do. We're going to pull those from the skin kit and attach it to our strap eye and run the strapping tape through it. If you did not order a Bimini skin kit, you would not have these hooks. You could just run the strapping tape through the strap eye instead. Our objective now is to level the frame and tension it slightly with the strapping tape on all of the legs. So measure from a common distance, whether it be the floor or the wooden frame, at each one of the splines where the sections have been joined together. So you're measuring exactly at the same spot, so where the joint is. And then make adjustments to the strapping tape. That's why we have not secured it down firmly yet, because we're making adjustments at each one of the strapping tapes until we are happy with the levelness of the frame and the tension of the frame. We do not want to tension the frame super tight, but we also do not want it so loose that it can actually just flop around. So make adjustments until you're happy. A second person with another tape measure is a really good idea. Here Bill is doing it all on his own, so he's having to do this several times. Not a hard process, just time consuming. Once everything is fairly level and fairly taut, we will now strap it in place securely. Then we'll go back to each one of the 4 legs of strapping tape and secure it with yet another run of strapping tape, because we do not want it to move once we pre-tension the frame. So here Bill's wrapping it around that junction again with yet another run, and he's placing it over the tape so that when we come to pattern with the Durascrim pattern material, it won't get stuck easily to the strapping tape here. And this also secures it for a second time here, so it won't possibly break when we tension the frame. To do this for all 4 of the strapping tapes at the sides of the Bimini. This is a 3-bow Bimini, so we need to mount the intermediate bow. The jaw slides on the primary bow for the intermediate bow can be moved approximately halfway up and then cinched down. Do not tighten them down fully yet, because we don't know exactly where they will be. Then we'll take the intermediate bow and insert it into the eye ends. The set screws on the eye end holding the intermediate bow can be cinched down. Find the center location between the primary and secondary bow and mark the strapping tape at that center location. The intermediate bow should come and rest about in the center location between the primary and secondary bow. We will tape it temporarily at this location. Once it does, confirm that the measurements for the jaw slide for that intermediate bow are the same on both the starboard and port sides of the frame. Make adjustments where necessary, then cinch down the jaw slides for the intermediate bow. Since the bows are secure, the strapping tape holding it to the wooden platform at the center location on the secondary bow can be removed. The skirt is the side of the bimini on the port and starboard side. Marking the skirt edge is next. We like to position the skirt edge approximately 7 to 8 inches from the curve. So here at 36 inches from the floor, we've decided to have our skirt edge be located. And we'll mark the primary and secondary bow. We will also mark the intermediate bow, but we'll do that after we apply the strapping tape. So we'll do this to both port and starboard sides. Here's what the skirt edge will look like. The top of our straight edge will be the skirt edge. We haven't marked the intermediate bow, but first we're going to apply strapping tape to the top portion of our bows. Our line that we struck on the bows is sort of disappearing slightly because of the fact that we are handling the bows. So this strapping tape will keep it from disappearing completely. We can still see it through the strapping tape. That's necessary for patterning in a later step. So if you can't see it, you'll need to remark it. We're going to remark it anyway and transfer the line to our strapping tape. So here we're applying strapping tape to the primary and secondary bow, and we will also apply it to the intermediate bow right on top of the line that we struck on those bows when the bows were laying on the floor. The skirt edge on the intermediate bow, or the center bow, will be up a few inches. So we measured 36 inches on the primary and secondary bow. This one we're going to measure up 37.5 inches, so about 1.5 inches higher there. When we place our straight edge on the primary and secondary bow, it looks like a lot more than 1.5 inches. Here we've placed a string on it, but as you can see, it is just about 1.5 inches, just like we measured. This will give the edge not a straight look, but actually a tilted up look towards the center, which will also help to tension the sides slightly. So we'll do the same thing on the other side in the intermediate bow. Now we're going to transfer those marks that we placed on the bows and place the strapping tape on top of them using an old compass and a marker yet again. This helps us to keep that line right where it needs to be. We'll be using this line later on in patterning. We like to mark below the skirt edge by 1 inch or 2. And we will do this on all 3 of the bows using that compass and clearly marking that line that's underneath the strapping tape. And at the center location, we're going to extend the center line so that we can see it, because we are going to tension these bows with a webbing strap later on in the next video. And we will also clearly mark where our skirt edge falls on all of our bows. That strapping tape we placed on top of our lines is also necessary for applying the double-sided tape. We didn't mention that earlier. Coming up is the materials list and the tools that we used to make this 3-bow Bimini frame. In this video, we made a 1-inch stainless steel 3-bow Bimini frame. We have other frame kits as well. Check them out at Sailrite. Notice all the materials that are included in the Bimini frame kits, and also some of it in the Bimini skin kits. If you'd like to make modifications to what is included in a Bimini frame kit or a Bimini skin kit, be sure to give us a call or email us. We're glad to help. In the next video, we'll show how to pattern on this 3-bow Bimini frame and how to make the 3-bow Bimini top. These are some of the clips that come from that video. A link to that video can be found here. Click the link at the top right. For more free videos like this, be sure to check out the Sailrite website or subscribe to the Sailrite YouTube channel. Here are other videos that you can view that are related to Bimini tops. It is your loyal patronage to Sailrite that makes these free videos available. I'm Eric Grant, and from all of us here at Sailrite, thanks for watching.